welcome back. It is Monday and I am Mr. Sesotris, and this week I wanted to talk about my first experience with an author that really got to me and really got me obsessed with reading. I had read stuff when I was younger, but I was in junior high when I really reading itself kind of became an obsession. And there was a particular author that I have to thank for that, and that is Michael Crichton. And it's actually because of my junior high math teacher, who was also our homeroom teacher. He had like a mini in-class library that was like 10, 15 books. It wasn't a lot. And we could sign them out with like a little piece of paper. And so the first book that I checked out, because I loved the movie, was Jurassic Park. And I read it, was obsessed, devoured it, and there was something about the writing style that just clicked with my brain. And I think it's because there's certain authors, when they write in a way that lines up with the way that you think, like the voice inside your head, the things that you think about, some authors just write in that same way and it really connects with you. And in a lot of his books, there's like people who are really passionate about certain things, sort of giving like mini lectures on their favorite subjects to like a captive audience. And so you'll have someone be like, oh, you've never heard about quantum physics? Let me give you the rundown. Or you've never heard about genetics or anything. Every book is sort of different, but the characters, there's always a part where there's a character who gives like a mini speech about a certain scientific subject, and everyone else is like, wow, I had no idea. And like, when you're 13, that's just like the dream, like to park everyone down in a chair while you ramble on about your hyperfixations. Maybe not everyone does that, but that's what I did, and I really, really love that. And so that's why I connected with him. And I actually have a kind of a funny story with that. After I read this, I started collecting the books for myself, usually trolling used bookstores and whatnot. And I was reading this book, Disclosure, which I don't know if it's aged very well. I was reading it in silent reading time. Now, this book is kind of a sort of clumsy attempt at exploring kind of the Me Too issue, kind of before it was a thing. Well, it was a thing, but it didn't have a name. And so this was written in '93 when the movie Jurassic Park came out. And it's basically about an assault, but it's reversed. So there's like a powerful female executive who assaults a male subordinate, and then there's a big court case surrounding that, and political intrigue and corporate espionage and all kinds of stuff. And I was reading the part at the beginning with the assault, and I was in class and there was people around me and I was silently reading and I was blushing beet red. Whoops. I was blushing beet red and there was people all around me. And I remember being like, can they read my mind? Do they know what I'm reading? This is so awful. And it was kind of embarrassing. I don't know if the book itself has aged super well. I haven't seen the movie version with, I think, Demi Moore and Michael Douglas, I think. But I remember I've only read it that one time. That was the one time I read it. And it was a very embarrassing experience. So who knows? Maybe I'll read it again in the future. I don't know, but moving on. So this obsession lasted for quite a while. I remember my first year of college, I had kind of an eccentric English teacher who I really liked. And so I wrote a research paper about Crichton and his work and kind of did like it was sort of a biography, but it wasn't really a biography about him as like a person and his life. It was more just about his books and his themes and why I liked it. And it was really cringy. I think I actually still have that paper. It's terrible. But it's pretty embarrassing. But anyways, I was pretty obsessed. For a while, he was like the only author I read, like, ever. And like everyone else my age was reading, like, Lord of the Rings, and I guess Harry Potter was kind of starting up at that point. And then here I was obsessed with this. So it was kind of my entire personality for a short time. But I wanted to go through kind of looking back at his book. So my favorite book of his, of all time ever, is Sphere. I love this book so much. It's like mind-bendy, psychological sci-fi at its greatest. It's one of those books where I read it like 10 times, and I think I picked up something different each time. Like, I had no clue what was going on the first time I read it. I was like, this is too beyond me. It's too smart. But I love it. The vibes are just immaculate. Like, it's if you like The Abyss, like the movie The Abyss, it's kind of sort of that. Also, Event Horizon, the movie Event Horizon, which I know a lot of people think is awful, but I genuinely like that movie. It kind of has the similar vibes of that, though it doesn't get quite as insane as it does in the end. But this book is perfect, and I love it so much, and it's still scary, and it's still good, and would highly recommend. Now, as for his least favorite book, this one's kind of painful. So, my least favorite book that he ever wrote is State of Fear. And it's really sad, because this is, like, I think his thickest book, and it was written kind of towards the end of his life, and he obviously, it was a big passion project for him. Unfortunately, it's about climate change denialism, and it's not great. I mean, I guess the plotting is fine, but, like, the villains are, like, these outrageously cartoonish, like, eco-terrorists who are all about, like, killing people and manufacturing disasters in order to prove that climate change is real, when in reality climate change is a hoax. And it's just, it was very sad for me, because his books were always so rooted in, like, actual science, and there was long bibliographies, and this one does the same thing. There's a long bibliography, and there's charts and graphs and everything, but the scientific community, once this book came out, they said, okay, you're misrepresenting a lot of data, and like, the conclusions are really wonky, and, like, climate change is a genuine issue, and this book is kind of dangerous because it's making it seem like it's just a bunch of whack jobs who are trying to just destroy people to further their own agendas. And so that was really sad, because I have always kind of looked up to him. He's no longer with us, of course, and I've always looked up to him, but this was kind of sad, because I was like, oh, you were doing so good. Because, like, there's stuff in his other books that's very pro-environment, maintaining, yeah, I know, maintaining the environment, especially in, like, The Lost World. And it was a little sad that this was kind of, because this was meant to be kind of his, like, big magnum opus. It was like his big, huge, massive novel that was going to kind of cap his career, and sadly it's not great. So that was kind of sad, but it's okay. My favorite movie adaptation of any of his works, that's kind of, it goes without saying, it's Jurassic Park. That movie's perfect. I will always love it. It's the best. It's better than the book even. And I love it so much. There are some others that are also good. The movie version of Sphere is kind of okay. I feel like it kind of loses the plot near the end. The movie version of Congo is a lot of fun, but again, it didn't really stick in the zeitgeist the way Jurassic Park did. So yeah, no, Jurassic Park will always be my favorite. Some shocking confessions. Okay, I know this is terrible. So first off, I never saw ER, unfortunately. Michael Crichton created the show ER, the medical drama, and I never watched any of it, even though I was obsessed with him. I don't get it. It's like my brain was like, nope, you can only like his books, nothing else. And so I never watched ER. I never got into it. I probably will watch it eventually, but I'm currently in a Murder, She Wrote rewatch, and that's, again, taking over my life because I love it so much. So unfortunately, that's where I am right now. My other shocking confession, I know this is terrible, but I like The Lost World better than Jurassic Park, the book. The movie The Lost World is okay. It's not as good as the first one, but it's not bad. But the book is awesome, and I feel like it's more intense and scarier and grittier, and it's more of a survivalist thing than the first one was. Even they're both kind of survivalist, but I felt like this one was more about the natural stuff, the wild stuff, instead of the technology stuff. The first one is very much about the failure of technology, and this is very much about the failure to contain natural systems. It's all about like ecology, and you get to see kind of the effects of breeding the dinosaurs, but like cloning them removes a lot of the, like, not genetic memory, but like instinct that would have driven them in the wild. And it's oh, okay, the cats are having a fight in the background. You kids be good. Anyways, but no, I love this one. It's great, it's wonderful, and I do like it better than the first book. I know that's horrifying. In terms of how he's held up, I think that's a bit more complicated. He's very much a product of his time. He doesn't come across as, like, problematic in the way that some others would, where, like, they're kind of actively hateful or holding on to kind of regressive ideas. I feel like when you read his stuff now, it comes across more like just a little clueless. He kind of existed in a very male-dominated field. He went to medical school, but he never actually practiced as a doctor, but he had like the medical degree. And so a lot of his stuff, it feels more kind of clueless. He was always more interested in technology and concepts than he was in people. That is one kind of criticism of his books overall, is like the plotting is amazing. It's flawless, but his characters do tend to be a little bit flat. And so as a result, his depiction of female characters comes across as a little clueless. It's not what I'd call like misogynistic or hateful. He does have a lot of like strong female characters, and he does try his best, but it sounds like he was more just, he didn't really care about kind of the nuances of character, and so everyone kind of feels like a stereotype, but like everyone, the male characters included, everyone is kind of tropes and a little cardboardy, but like you don't care because the plotting is so good and the concepts are so good. So that is kind of one thing. I don't think he's someone who you would read now and like be horrified by. Another author I think of is Robert A. Heinlein. If you read A Stranger in a Strange Land, there's interesting concepts there, and it's an interesting sci-fi premise, but the depiction of women is just appalling. He, again, very much a product of his time, but like he didn't even try to be progressive. It was just like the women are all they want to do is just be domestic and take care of men, and it's, you know, big concepts are too hard for them, and it's just, I wasn't a fan. You don't see that a lot in Crichton. It's mostly just everyone is nerds, or everyone's a nerd in good ways. And so you've got lots of great female characters who, they know their stuff, they're smart, they're strong. We don't get inside their head very much, so kind of just like all the male characters, they come across as a little flat, but, you know, he wasn't ever hateful towards, you know, female characters. And that's one of those things that you kind of think. His attitude toward gender, again, are a little limited. He didn't talk about it as much. Disclosure does get into it a little bit, but, you know, that's kind of the only one that hasn't aged super well. He does have fairly good diversity in his stories, actually, which is, you know, which is fine. But again, everyone is kind of the same. He didn't do a lot of research into like other cultures, except in like Rising Sun, where he did lots of research into sort of the Japanese business culture. So, you know, you do see that, but, you know, I don't think he's someone who has aged so poorly that we would just never read his stuff again. Like, I feel like you could skip Disclosure and State of Fear and just never read those, and that's fine. But, like, the other ones are fine. You know, Congo, The 13th Warrior. Well, Eaters of the Dead is its original term. The movie version's actually pretty good, too. But Eaters of the Dead, his historical stuff, like The Great Train Robbery, and, you know, Pirate Latitudes, which is one of his later ones that was written after, or that was published after he died. Those are still a ton of fun. His techno thrillers, the only thing about them that hasn't aged well is when you have someone with like a big chunky laptop that's like this thick, and they're like bragging about how it has like 5 gigabytes of memory, and everyone's like, oh my god, how do you do that? And so you're kind of like, really? Like, my phone has more than that. So I mean, the technology stuff is quaint, but even like his really early stuff, and I'm not talking about those 6 books that he wrote in medical school, because he was I don't know. He wrote 6 books in medical school, Harvard Medical School, just to pay bills on the side. He had extra time to write novels, and they were like potboilers and adventure stories and, you know, whatever. But they're still fun and they're still good, and he got them published in medical school. That like explodes my brain that someone would have, like, when I was in grad school, I was doing English, which is like the lamest one because it doesn't require any like travel or research or anything. You just like live in your office and you bury yourself in books and then you absorb them through osmosis. But he somehow found time going to Harvard Medical School to write 6 novels, and I'm just aghast at that. But like, if you look at his early stuff, like Andromeda Strain, which was published in 1969, that's kind of his first book that was published under his name. It still holds up. It's still great. It's really tightly crafted and it's really interesting, and it's scary in good ways, and it's just wonderful. So like, the technology is a little dated, but like, you don't care because it just feels more like a retro techno thriller, and it's fine. So I think we should still read his stuff, being aware of kind of his shortcomings, but you know, I think he's still worth reading, and I still really like him, and I think I will eventually do a reread of his series. I say that a lot about like old authors, like, I'll do a reread of their entire series, which is so ambitious, and then I don't have time to do it because I'm reading everything else. And I read slowly anyways, like, it's terrible. I go through audiobooks pretty fast because I have lots of commute time to work. But when it comes to like reading physical books, it takes me forever. Like, I started my current read in the beginning of April, and it's now like halfway through the month and I still haven't finished it. It's so terrible. I'm embarrassed. But anyways, I just wanted to rant about Michael Crichton a bit because I love his work and I loved it so much, and he was the one that got me like obsessed with like collecting books. Like, he was the one who got me, you know, there's a difference, you know, they say like there's a different hobby between collecting books and reading books. He was the one who kind of combined the two, and so he made me a book collector and a furious reader, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for watching this ranty video, but I hope you all have a wonderful week, and thank you for watching.